Here we go, something a little bit different. Today, instead of reviewing BattleBots, I'm going to be reviewing Robot Wars. Now, admittedly, I wasn't sure how to start reviewing Robot Wars, because I wanted to start off by showing just how good Robot Wars can be, but I realised that starting off with some of the latter seasons would require me to give a lot of context as to several of the robots. It just would waste a lot of time, so, well, I didn't really want to. We're going to have to start off with the first season, all the way back in the late 90s, and we're going to have to work our way from there. And hey, maybe we'll see some hidden gems in these earlier seasons. It should be interesting, so come with me as we watch the evolution, the rise and the fall of Robot Wars, starting off with Series 1, Heat A. After the intro, Jeremy Clarkson welcomes us all to the show, and Jeremy is far more blasé than your typical robot show hosts, and you can tell that the show, and I guess really the sport, is still finding its footing as it tries to figure out its presentation on the TV. After that, they show some of the American Robot Wars fighting as the Master and Four duke it out. Honestly, I'm gonna tell you this, they are setting your expectations way too high with that first fight. I'd love to have seen the Master and Four, no, not that one, competing, because those really show that, the Americans got a nice head start, and clearly they knew exactly what they were doing, because that looked like a lot of fun. Anyway, they then show the teams on this season working on the robots backstage before introducing the key component of Robot Wars. See, Robot Wars has many obstacles that it introduces over the years, but two of the bits that would go on to make the core DNA, the core identity of Robot Wars, is the Pit of Oblivion, which isn't actually in this series, weirdly enough. But what is this season are the house robots. Now, for those who aren't aware, the house robots are basically moving obstacles. They're controlled by the show itself, and they often have stuff that break the rules. They typically weigh more than the competitors. They'll wield weapons that maybe aren't allowed by the competitors, such as a flamethrower. The idea is that they're essentially obstacles in their own right. Get too close to them and you'll have to duke it out with them. And it actually leads to a lot of fun that we're going to see later on in seasons where robots start fighting back against the house robots and getting the upper hand. It's honestly a lot of fun. And they introduce the first four house robots of the show's run. Shunt with the scoop and the axe. Matilda with the pneumatic lifting tusks and a chainsaw tail. Dead Metal with the grabbing pincer arms and a saw arm that comes down, kind of similar to the way that Saw Blades or Scorpios work. And finally, Sergeant Bash with a bayonet, a little circular disc on the back, and most importantly, that flamethrower, which honestly becomes the most iconic part of Sergeant Bash's offense. These are four of the most iconic house robots and still look cool, even in these original, unrefined forms. The arm on Dead Metal, the bayonet on Sergeant Bash, and Matilda's chainsaw show that they aren't quite refined yet, but still, looking at them really leaves an impression. Now, they show off the robots this heat. Roblox shows up first, weighing in at 82.5 kilograms. Next up is Killertron, weighing in at 72.2 kilograms. Then we see Barry weighing in at 116.9 kilograms. Shogun comes in weighing 82.7 kilograms, Nemesis comes in weighing 76.8 kilograms, and Grunt weighing in at just 45 kilograms. You can see that the sport being so young in the UK means a whole host of different weights within these robots, with several robots being either notably underweight or very overweight. Next up, the Gauntlet is introduced while the house robots drive around the Spike Go and the drills, or as I like to call them, Killer Lock glory holes, keep going. They also have a swinging mace, and I'm really glad that the show would eventually start to pick up that they need to be a bit safer, because this feels like it could have gone, it was a little bit dangerous, that's all I'll say. Now, the way that this works is that they'll start up with the robots going out, and basically they have to cover as much distance as they can, or better yet, complete the course. The robot that goes the shortest distance will be eliminated. I'll admit I don't like these non-combat rounds because I'm here to watch robots fight. We're seeing the robots, but we're not really seeing the war. Anyway, Roblox starts off, and they do have a little bit of a rough start at first as they struggle to get off the turntable before they decide to go down the route with the house robots, easily getting past them and going for the finish. With a completion, Roblox will be going to the next round without a doubt. Then there was Barry, who rushed right out but crashed, and after some issues tussling with Sergeant Bash, they tried to run away, and unfortunately, while the scoop being low would normally be a good thing in combat, because they're in the gauntlet, it gets caught on the ram, and unfortunately they're not really able to get away from that position as Matilda comes in with a chainsaw and tries to push them off. Really, they just don't do anything after this point. With a distance of 2.93 meters, Barry obviously was going to end up eliminated here. Next up, Shogun was ready to go, and Shogun easily cleared the first ramp without any issues, but upon the second ramp, they ended up falling off and ending on their side. Matilda comes in with her tusks and does some damage to the side from the looks of things, but their run ends there. Still, they got further than Barry, and therefore they wouldn't be eliminated from the competition. Then we got one of the more iconic robots of Series 1, besides Roadblock of course, which, if you don't know, you'll find out. It's Nemesis. Nemesis comes out of the gate and over the first ramp without much issue, and then easily clear the second ramp and into Matilda, but they easily get past them, being the second robot to complete the gauntlet and are guaranteed to get into the next round. Grunt is up next and immediately wedges Dead Metal. Once they break away, they're pinned by Matilda, and finally they break free and make it to the end, easily getting past them all with their speed. With Grunt completing the gauntlet, that means that they're guaranteed to move on to the next round as well. Finally, Killertron's turn to go as they make their way up the ramp with little issue before bumping into Dead Metal. They struggle on the obstacles as they finally get on the second ramp, and then get stuck similar to Shogun as they hit some springs? This gauntlet is really strange. Still, making 11 meters means that Barry is the one that is eliminated at the first round. Probably for the best, given how Barry would be so overweight even by modern standards. I know people give the what ifs about Grunt, considering I believe it's a loner bot, and therefore probably should have got out in the first round, but I think a massively overweight bot potentially winning the entire season would have been a bigger controversy. Now, I'll be honest with you, the gauntlets are a bit hit and miss. You can tell that this really hasn't been ironed out yet, and again, I want to see the robots fight, and this isn't really doing it for me. Next up is the sumo event, where the robots have to either survive for a minute with Shunt trying to push them out, or better yet, push Shunt out of the circle themselves. Shunt, in a strange choice, typically goes plow first in this series and not scoop first, though I imagine with the fact that some of these Series 1 robots are a little rough, I have to imagine it's likely to give them a fighting chance here. Anyway, Shogun starts off and does little to nothing, essentially making an attempt to break away as they're currently being pushed on by their side from Shunt causes them to go off the edge. Shogun blows a kiss off of the edge in a funny moment in the show admittedly, but lasting 21 seconds, things were looking risky for them. Next up, Killertron, instead of pushing, actually tries swinging for Shunt. Shunt doesn't seem as bothered as they only ever swing back once. Killertron does manage to survive till the very end, mainly by just doing nothing really. It didn't seem like they were trying to get away, it didn't seem like they were trying to push back. After they got a few swings, they just decided to sit there and only really move when they got too close to the edge so they could get back to the center. Killertron obviously managed to survive the minute, but it got extremely boring after they stopped swinging. Next up, Roadblock was ready to take on Shunt, and Shunt actually goes scoop first this time, likely because they already know that Roadblock possesses a threat, given that it's got an actual wedge to it. Now, one thing that becomes immediately obvious from the bird's eye view is Roadblock is extremely wide. It basically dwarfs Shunt in the amount of space it takes on the floor. There's a bit of a back and forth as Shunt gets under Roadblock, but then once Roadblock gets under Shunt, it easily pushes them off the circle and goes down with them. Honestly, this was the best sumo performance of the lot, as Roadblock shows its dominance. That was actually kind of exciting. And then you get Nemesis' turn at the sumo, and they race right away to Shunt and nearly go right off the edge from Shunt's pushing. They really don't have much they can do, however, Shunt manages to make some critical driving errors. By backing away to try and face on against Nemesis once again, Nemesis would again get in close, meaning Shunt essentially backed into the edge where Nemesis managed to nut them off without even falling off themselves. It seems that Shunt actually ended up making a similar mistake to what Shogun did, and it was actually kind of interesting to see how Nemesis managed to actually be quite tactical in its sumo attempt. So with that being said, that means Nemesis, along with Roadblock, managed to not only survive, but beat Shunt in the sumo contest. Pretty good, all being said. Finally, Grunt is up next and basically just drives right off of the circle. Out in mere seconds, laughing all along the way, they end up losing, which means Shogun survives. Given that Grunt was a stock bot, I think some people will be very happy about this. But man, it definitely was a crazy thing to see and a little bit of a letdown. I'd like to have seen Grunt at least try a little bit before flinging itself off, but well. Still, the performances from Nemesis and Roadblock were still pretty good all the same. Now finally, the battles begin! These episodes in the beginning are only half an hour long, and 20 minutes of it have been spent on these random contests. It's really left me hungering for some actual battles. Now, they explain the judging criteria: damage, control, aggression, all standard stuff, and the ever nebulous style category, which the closest thing that it seems to be that the Robot Wars wiki explains it is the style is meant to be how much the robot entertain, which I guess you don't want to have a robot that just bores the audience senseless, but given that this is already a very subjective thing, judging a robot, this really is something that I imagine led to a lot of the controversial decisions that ends up in Robot Wars history. Anyway, the first fight is between Nemesis and Roadblock. Now, Roadblock clearly has the advantage with the lower ground clearance, and I was interested to see if Nemesis could do anything against them. The fight begins and Roadblock comes in actually back first, scratching some of the fur off with their rear saw blades, shockingly not shoving them around. Nemesis definitely does look worse for wear, however, but then Roadblock drives into the CPZ, the Corner Patrol Zone, where the house robots roam. Matilda attacks Roadblock with the chainsaw, though Sergeant Bash then comes in with the flamethrower and catches Nemesis on fire. It isn't a huge fire compared to what we'd see in later seasons, but it definitely was exhilarating compared to what we saw before. Much appreciated, and it's good to see a little bit of excitement come to the show here. The fight ends on that and Roadblock moves on. Nemesis is out of the competition and likely for the best, as the team would go on to better things with their next robot, Dietor. This fight actually isn't too bad by the standards of this series, which means the fight wasn't that good, but the fire and saw blade did help somewhat. Next up was Killertron and Shogun. Now, Killertron had the obvious advantage to me with the pickaxe, as neither robot was particularly low to the ground. Now, the fight starts and Shogun has some notable drive issues at first as it veers to the side before finally running into Killertron. Killertron swings the axe, though very lethargically, as it doesn't really do a whole lot, before sitting and spinning with the axe instead. Shogun then drives away and gets stuck on the grill. Killertron goes in for some swings with the pickaxe, as Sergeant Bash then comes in to try and liven things up as it goes in with the saw blade against Killertron, but the disc breaks off. Now, the fight ends there as Shogun is unable to continue, and Killertron will move on to the Heat Final. This was not much of a fight as Shogun wasn't able to do much of anything, and Killertron basically won with the Luigi strategy, doing nothing. Finally, we're on to the final fight of the night, Killertron versus Roadblock. Both robots come out and some nice swings from Killertron, definitely better than its Shogun fight as it gets some nice swings on Roadblock. Though Roadblock easily ends up wedging them and pushes them into the sides and the CPZ where Sergeant Bash blasts Killertron with the flamethrower. Killertron manages to escape before being wedged again, and Roadblock, with a little bit of a tussle and a little bit of a nudge from dead metal into Roadblock, Roadblock manages to tip Killertron over onto their side. Seeing as Stream X weren't yet a thing at this point, at least in the UK, that means Roadblock wins and will move on to the grand final. This was actually probably the best fight of the night, as both robots actually managed to get some offense in, so it was a little bit more competitive than the previous fights tonight. Overall, this episode really gives me a great appreciation for how far things have come nowadays when watching BattleBots as well as the modern day UK scene. It also leaves me excited to see the tech evolve throughout Robot Wars as we go through the series, as it really does get exciting. But yeah, Series 1 really is a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. We're not going to see anything that crazy, but at the very least we are starting to see the foundation be laid for what will come, so I can appreciate it in that sense at least. But with that being said, that is my review of Series 1 Heat A of Robot Wars. If you've watched Robot Wars Series 1, then let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. If you haven't seen Robot Wars yet, then I can hardly recommend that you check out Mech Plus. Mech Plus is the official way of checking them out. You can watch them for free, although you will be seeing some ads, or you can pay, I think it's like 20 quid a yearly, and then that just removes the ads. I don't remember, I don't pay, I just watch the ads. But that's a great way of watching it. I believe some of the episodes are up on YouTube, but if you want to watch them in the best quality possible, this is really your best avenue. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this review. If you did, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified of future reviews on the channel. As you can see, I'm reviewing a bunch of different robot shows. And with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye guys!